IFP leader Velenkosini Hlabisa has lauded the Government of National Unity's progress in dealing with natural disasters. Hlabisa briefed the media just a short while ago on the party's reflections on its first 100 days since the formation of the Government of National Unity. His comments follow a warning from the SA Weather Service for disruptive rain, thunderstorms and strong winds across various parts of the country. Hlabisa says a climate change task team will give an update next week as the country enters the summer rainy season.
As we all know, we are living in the times of climate change. We have championed the disaster management system that will enhance resilience against natural disaster. We have established a national task team on disaster risk management, and on Monday next week, we will be holding the press conference to demonstrate and convey our readiness for the midsummer as we are approaching a period where we'll be having a lot of rain as a country to ensure that all sections are activated to be ready to mitigate the challenges of climate change.
All right, let's get you some analysis on the IFP's its own reflections on its 100 days as part of the Government of National Unity. We're joined now by Dr Imraan Buccus, who is a political analyst. Dr. Buccus, thanks very much indeed for coming on to the program. By all accounts, quite a glowing review from the IFP about its own performance as the Government of National Unity, its own performance in the Cocta Ministry, in the Fisheries Forestry Ministry, Transport Ministry as well. I don't know about you, but for once it would be a breath of fresh air if a political party came on and talked about its first 100 days in office and was actually just a little bit critical of itself.
Yeah, well, Michelle, that might be wishful thinking. I think not surprising that the IFP has been singing its own praises. So, that's generally what happens when a political party assesses itself. But I think we need to acknowledge that, Hlabisa is a measured man, an intelligent man who seems poised to take this party into the 21st century. I think he's brought greater coherence to the party. It gives the impression that it's less corrupt, although that might not always be the reality. I think there are various fractures and fissures within the party. There certainly are pockets of excellence, but I think, the politics of patronage still applies. The kind of nightmare of corruption still applies even within the ranks of the IFP. So, but all in all, I think it's come a long way. It's not the IFP of yesteryear. It's also a party, I would contend, that's perhaps less conservative than it was. Even though many would say, listen, it's still a conservative party in line with a section of its electorate. But, that electorate is changing too. I think the rural market is shrinking for the IFP, its traditional base. So it's changing. It's looking at the politics of urbanization. It's looking to attract a new, young, urbane vote. So I think multiple changes in the IFP. But not all glowing like Hlabisa may have made it seem to be.
Yeah, he's talked about his 100 days at the helm of the Cocta Ministry. It's probably one of those departments that are a bit of a poison chalice, just given the state of local government in South Africa. Mfuleni, for example, and it's the example that he cited as well, has been struggling for several years to get its house in order. But he says he's making really good strides, particularly in Mfuleni. He's reached an agreement with Eskom. He's ensured that salaries are paid, and he's doing really good work with the Gauteng Cocta department. Would you agree with that, Dr. Buccus?
Well, no, certainly I think there are pockets of excellence, right? But I think the problem one faces at local government is a much larger problem. I think, if you think about a society building exercise, and yes, we can talk about a society building exercise 30 years into democracy, one often thinks of that central pivot being local governance. And we know and this has been well ventilated in the media, that local governance is the sphere of governance that struggles the most in terms of corruption, maladministration, political killings, particularly in KZN. So I think, that's a huge problem that has certainly not been solved in a large number of municipalities in KZN. In large part, it has to do with the sort of competence and the bureaucratic competence that we need at local government. So certainly, I think we need a new injection of leadership. One of the mistakes we make in post-colonial and post-apartheid societies like ours is that we often take the best of our bureaucrats and place them provincially and nationally, and local governance struggles. And the other problem we have in local governance is often the very fine line between government, the underworld, other forces, and all of those things impact on the lack of a credible, efficient local government system, particularly in a province like KZN.
The IFP also took the opportunity to comment on a whole range of issues that have been in the news cycle recently. Talking about mass killings in KwaZulu-Natal and in the Eastern Cape, but also the suspected poisoning of these 6 children in Soweto over the past couple of weeks. And in almost a throwaway line, Velenkosini Hlabisa saying that the IFP believes the spaza shop industry should be returned to South Africans. He takes it a step further. He says, and that we should be deporting illegal immigrants en masse.
Now, that's the kind of conservatism, I alluded to at the start of the interview. And that, again, is not surprising. I think Hlabisa falls into the same trap that Action SA and, its leadership and many others have fallen into. I think it's a limiting analysis. Of course, people need to be in the country legally, but I think, one of the limitations of that analysis is it looks at the fractures in our society and then it looks to scapegoat people. We see this happening in many amongst many authoritarian leaders, from Trump to Bolsonaro in the past, to Duterte in the Philippines, and to multiple other leaders. And I think what's missing in the analysis is that it's not the foreigner, and this kind of xenophobia applies particularly at the base of our social strata amongst the poorest or the poorer people, not professors who are Nigerian or Congolese, and not business people who are Nigerian and Congolese and of other nationalities. But people at the base of the social strata struggle the most. And I would contend that what's missing in the analysis is the failures of government, and it's the failures of capital and the system that we have that's not able to, see to the needs of people. And I think it's unfortunate that Hlabisa and others often say mass deportation as though, that's a solution. It's almost as though they kind of reading off Trump's book to come up with that kind of perspective.
Yeah, straight from the Trump playbook. Also a comment there towards the tail end of that briefing about the IFP's decades-long relationship with the Oppenheimers. And Velenkosini Hlabisa saying it's resulted in the building of schools, of clinics, hospitals. I don't think that he actually mentions the EFF by name as a party, but he said that it's a party that for the last 10 years has become known for race baiting, insults and flip-flopping on different issues. And in fact, the 2026 elections will signal the death knell of this particular party. I don't think you could be singing or rather talking about any other party that would come to mind. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's of course, like you're suggesting, it's very likely that he's talking about the EFF, and I think think tanks that are perhaps linked to foundations that the Oppenheimer family might have an interest in have also provided analysis to suggest that there might be a downward trend in support for the EFF. I think one of the reports I read put the EFF recently at about 6%. So there certainly is an implosion, that kind of authoritarianism or left-wing authoritarianism that some people might attribute to the EFF. I think, all of that is not helping. And yes, I think some of the crude, race politics that the EFF has become accustomed to, I don't think is cohering with its electorate. So in part, that's true. But, Hlabisa's idea and his singing of praises to the Oppenheimer Foundation and others, one needs to be careful of that. I think there's a broader debate in the country about multipolarity, where South Africa sits at. And there are multiple foundations in the country that think that the West is a natural ally for South Africa. And, I think South Africa is at a time in its history where it's saying that not one country should be the country of choice, but it wants a choice of countries to be able to deal with. And foundations like the Oppenheimer Foundation might really be thinking about our relationship with the outside world in ways that might not suit our political context. So I think Hlabisa probably misses that in his own analysis of that relationship.
Dr. Imraan Buccus, pleasure talking to you this afternoon. He's a political analyst, a research fellow at Durban University of Technology, as we unpack the IFP's own review of its first 100 days in the government of national unity.